Hello, and welcome to our financial aid presentation. By watching this recording, we are confident you will have the information you need to guide you and your family through the 2024-25 FAFSA process. My name is Abby Langner. I am a financial aid advisor for Baker College. Although this is a recorded presentation, the Baker College financial aid advisors are always willing to assist you with your application questions. After watching this video, feel free to reach out to us via email at financialaid@baker.edu or phone at 989-729-3911. Let's talk first about what exactly the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, is. The FAFSA is a tool typically completed online at studentaid.gov that collects demographic and financial information used to determine a student's eligibility for financial aid. When completing the FAFSA, the student lists which colleges they wish to have their results released to. Up to 20 colleges can be listed on the FAFSA. Demographic information such as legal name, social security number, address, and date of birth will be requested for both the student and parents if applicable. Later in this presentation, we'll cover when parental information is needed on the FAFSA. In addition to demographic information, 2022 tax information will be used to complete the 2024-25 FAFSA. There are some general eligibility requirements that must be met in order for a student to be eligible for federal financial aid. Students must be U.S. citizens or permanent residents. Students must have completed high school or obtained a GED, and students cannot be in default on federal student loans. Regardless of income, all students meeting the eligibility criteria will qualify for some form of financial aid, which includes grants and loans. Therefore, we recommend everyone complete the FAFSA. Also, the FAFSA is an annual application, so you'll need to complete it every year while attending college. Typically, the FAFSA is available every October 1st. However, with the changes happening to the 24-25 FAFSA application, we're anticipating to see it sometime in December 2023. Upon submission of the FAFSA, a student aid index, or SAI, is calculated, and that's a result of the formula that the federal government uses to determine the family's eligibility to pay. The SAI will remain the same at all schools and will be used to determine how much need-based versus non-need-based aid will be offered to a student. While many people think of need-based aid as just the Pell Grant, that is untrue. The amount of need-based aid that a person could qualify for varies based on the school's cost of attendance. Other forms of need-based aid include some state grants, work study, and subsidized student loans. Ultimately, the schools will use the SAI from the FAFSA to determine what types of financial aid they can offer a student. Here's just a general overview of the FAFSA application process steps. The U.S. Department of Education anticipates completing the FAFSA will take approximately 1 hour. I will go into each of these steps in more detail through the presentation, so let's go through it. Step 1, create an FSA ID. This is your login for the FAFSA application, and you will have to use your social security number to make this account. I recommend that you keep it secure. Step 2, determine who will be a contributor. Contributors are people who are required to supply information to a student's FAFSA application. This can include a parent or a spouse. Step 3, collect information from contributors. If you need contributors on your FAFSA, then they will need their own FSA IDs. Again, the same rules apply to make this account. Step 4, completing the FAFSA. The student will complete their portion of the FAFSA and invite contributors to submit their information on the FAFSA. Step 5, contributors complete the FAFSA. The contributors will put their information in and complete their portion. Step 6, review the results. Once the student and all contributors have completed their section, then the FAFSA will be submitted. And last, step 7, watch for communications from schools. They will contact you with more details on verification or other procedures that needed to be completed before awarding your aid, or they may have an offer ready for you to review and accept. Now that we have a good overview, let's go into the details of each step. One of the most important items that will be needed to complete the FAFSA is the Federal Student Aid, or FSA ID. Both the student and any contributors will need an FSA ID. Parents, if you already have an FSA ID completed, if you did the FAFSA for yourself or another child, you do not need to create a new one. The FSA ID you already have assigned to you will work. If the student and/or parent doesn't have an FSA ID, please create one right away at studentaid.gov. New for the 24-25 FAFSA, an FSA ID will be required for anyone that is asked to provide information on a student's FAFSA application. If parents filed separately for their taxes, for example, then each parent will need their own FSA ID. Or for an independent student, if you and your spouse filed separate taxes in 2022, the student's spouse will also need an FSA ID in order to contribute. Please keep in mind that the FSA ID is the signature associated with the person's information entered to create the ID. Do not create the ID for someone else. Students should create their own ID, and a parent will create a separate ID for themselves. Provide answers to the verification questions that you will remember should you ever forget your FSA ID and you need to recover it. When submitting for the FSA ID, make sure you correctly enter your Social Security number, name, and date of birth. These must match what is on your Social Security card. If one of these data elements don't match, it could mean that the ID becomes invalidated. Additionally, each FSA ID must have a unique email address. Do not use a temporary email such as a high school email or a college email, as these may be deleted. Link the FSA ID to a permanent or personal email address. And finally, don't forget your FSA ID. This is the only account that you will ever create, and it will be used from your first FAFSA submission all the way through loan repayment. Unlike other websites, you will never be able to create a second account because your FSA ID is linked to your Social Security number. Here's a screenshot from studentaid.gov. Creating an FSA ID requires the creation of a username and password. When you begin creating the username and password, avoid using personal identifiers, for example, first name, last name, or date of birth. The username must be 6 to 30 characters long, and you can use any combination of numbers and/or letters. The username is not case sensitive. Your password must be 8 to 30 characters long and contain one or more numbers, one or more uppercase letters, and one or more lowercase letters. Your password is case sensitive. Choose a username and password that you can remember, but would be hard for others to guess. You will also be asked to pair a second authentication method to your account, like sending a secure code via email or text, or even setting up an authenticator app. As mentioned previously, contributors such as parents and spouses will need their own FSA IDs to complete their portions of the FAFSA application, if they are required to contribute. I strongly encourage making an FSA ID if you have not already and keeping it in a safe place so it is ready for you each year when you need to apply. Having the FSA IDs prior to completing the FAFSA will save you both time and frustration, so please get your FSA IDs today. Okay, so you have your FSA IDs and you're on studentaid.gov. Under the Apply for Aid section, you will click on Complete the FAFSA form. If the student has never completed a FAFSA before, they will choose the Start a New Form option. If you are looking to start college in the fall of 2024, then you will need to complete the 24-25 FAFSA application. One thing to point out before we dive deeper into filling out the FAFSA is that every FAFSA user's experience is going to be slightly different. The FAFSA has skip logic built in and only asks the questions that pertain to your family's situation. Answer each question, and it will determine what the future questions are that you need to answer. In order for schools to determine what financial aid you qualify for, they will need access to your FAFSA information. You determine which schools receive that information by adding them to your FAFSA. Every college has a federal school code. Baker College's federal school code is 004673. You can list up to 20 schools on your FAFSA with the initial submission, but we recommend you only list the schools that you have a genuine interest in attending. If you change your mind, you can always correct your FAFSA to add school codes. Remember, the first school listed on the FAFSA is where the state of Michigan assumes you're going to attend. If it's a Michigan school, that's where the state will plan to send any state grants and scholarships. If you decide to attend a different school than what you originally listed as your number one on the FAFSA, then you'll need to update your school choice in the My SSG portal. A common question we get when students are applying for aid is whether or not they need to include parental information on the FAFSA. There are 13 questions on the FAFSA that determine whether a student is dependent or independent. If the student can answer yes to any one of these questions, then they are considered independent. On this slide, I'm highlighting 6 of the most common ways which a student can be independent and not need to include parental information. You will notice that this slide does not ask whether the student is living on their own or self-supporting. Typically, students are considered dependent and need to include parental information until they are 24 years old, married, or supporting a dependent more than 50%. There can be unique situations that may warrant an otherwise dependent student to be determined as independent. If there is documented abuse or neglect, financial aid offices can use professional judgment to perform a dependency override. If you are unable to answer yes of the dependency questions and you have a unique situation, please contact the financial aid office at the college you're planning to attend for assistance. New for the 24-25 FAFSA and beyond is the addition of contributors to a student's FAFSA. A contributor refers to anyone who is required to provide their financial information on the FAFSA application based on the student's dependency status or their marital status and tax filing status. The FAFSA application will let you know whose information you will need. Everyone's situation will be different. If contributors do not complete their portion in 45 days after the student request, then the form will be deleted. If a dependent student has parents that are divorced or separated, then the student will have their parent that provided the most financial support in the last 12 months as a contributor. Let's go over an example. Let's say we have a high school senior that is dependent on the FAFSA and both parents are married. If the parents filed taxes in 2022 as married filing jointly, then only one parent will have to contribute on the application. However, if the parents filed as single that year or married filing separately, then both parents will need to contribute to the FAFSA. Similar to an independent student, let's say an independent student filed 2022 taxes with their spouse as married joint, then only the student will be the contributor. But let's say that the independent student got married in 2023 and completed taxes in 2022 as single, and their spouse did as well. Then the student and the spouse will have to report information on the FAFSA application. As I mentioned, this is a new process for 24-25. Please call if you have any questions on who to report, but the FAFSA will also walk you through who to report as well. Now that you have a better understanding of which parent or contributor may be asked on the FAFSA, let's take a look at how the information will be added to a student's FAFSA. The student will be asked to provide the contributor's identifiers, including first and last name, date of birth, social security number, and email address for the contributor request to be sent to. The contributor will then get an email invite for them to log in and complete their section of the FAFSA application. Please note that the parent's marital status is whatever their status is the day they complete the FAFSA, not what is reported on the taxes. The contributor will then be presented to accept or decline the student's invitation to their FAFSA form. Please note that if a parent declines the invitation, the student will not be eligible for federal Pell Grants or subsidized student loans. They will only be eligible for unsubsidized student loans only. By contributing to a student's FAFSA, you are not automatically on the hook to pay for your student's education. You are simply just seeing what they could be eligible for. Another change for the 2024-25 FAFSA is the addition of the Future Act Direct Data Exchange tool known as FADDX. The Future Act was passed, which calls for the FAFSA to be simplified and allow the direct transfer from an individual's tax data on file with the IRS to be transferred directly to the FAFSA application. This eliminates the need for manual entry of tax and income information and makes the application process quicker and easier. Because this is a lot of income information coming over between systems, students and contributors will have to provide their consent to the FAFSA individually. While the FADDX system will transfer over your tax information, it will not transfer over information regarding the student and contributor's assets. Remember, answer the questions as they are presented and report answers individually for both the student and the parents. The first one should be easy. They're simply asking how much you have in cash, savings, and checking accounts. The second question about investment often leads questions for families. So let's talk about what to include first. You will include real estate that is not the home you live in, so rental properties could be an investment. Other investments could include trust funds, UGMA or UTMA accounts, money market funds, mutual funds, CDs, stocks, stock options, bonds, other securities, installment and land sale contracts, and commodities. 529 college saving plans also get reported, but who owns the fund determines how it gets reported. Be sure to read the student investment and parent investment links in the FAFSA for more details. Also, keep in mind that you will have to report the net worth of these investments. So if you have a rental property with a value of $100,000, but the mortgage is $90,000, then the net worth is only $10,000. Let me also clear up what is not an investment. Your primary residence that you live in is not an investment that needs to be reported. You also do not need to include the value of life insurance, retirement plans such as 401k and 304b, pension funds, annuities, non-education IRAs, or KEO plans. I want to make sure that I am clear that you do not include your primary residence or retirement and pension funds. And then lastly, the final asset question will ask about businesses and farms. So if you and your family have any businesses or farms, you'll want to report the net worth in this question. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to this presentation and think about financial aid in the FAFSA. Please remember that regardless of where you're considering going to school, we are here to help you. Do not hesitate to reach out to us should you have any specific questions when you're completing the FAFSA or any general questions about financial aid. Best of luck to you as you venture into the next phase of life. Thank you.